Look into this dark, unforgiving glass eye, the mesh of the microphone. Tell it your deepest thoughts, hopes, fears, and desires. We will take these emotions, turn them, and feed them back to you, for we have goals, goals that your feelings will assist. This is how we rule, from the shadows, playing your emotions like puppet strings. We lead you to destinations that we have prepared, and you willingly oblige, thinking these decisions to be your own. When you do as we wish, we reward you, and when you go against us, we punish you. In a million subtle ways, we influence your supposedly free choice. By this method, we rule over a population convinced that they are the masters of their own destiny. Welcome to the Empire of Lies.
Yes, welcome indeed back to the Empire of Lies. I'm excited tonight because I know that it may be boring for many people, but complex economics is interesting to me and very important to understanding some of the major lies and the major pillars of this horrible regime that we all live in today. And tonight we'll be talking about a core pillar of everything, which is central banking. Yes, and you can tell from the subline there, why must we have usury? We will be talking about usury as well. And I would like to remind you guys that this is going to be a short, concise stream, only around 1 hour. And of course, we will be getting to all of your paid chats at the end of the stream. We will respond to each and every one of them. And I definitely would appreciate it if you would financially support us. I say us because half of the proceeds I bring in go to my friend Chris here. We split the proceeds of this stream 50-50. And you can support the stream via rants on Rumble, hyper chats on Odyssey. If you are a Subscribestar user, you can send paid chats called tips on Subscribestar. And of course, I will read those as well. And of course, you can send short messages via Cash App and PayPal. And if you want to treat us to the highest percentage of money, you can do that via Cash App and PayPal because they only take a tiny, tiny percent of the money. Only, I think, about 5%, 2%, 2.5%, I think, on PayPal. Entropy, however, is my favorite place for you to send paid chats because the good people over at Entropy, they are aligned with free speech and they are pro-Western like we are. So I prefer that you would use Entropy to send in paid chats. If at all possible, please do so. Now, tonight, since we only have 1 hour and this is a very dense topic, this will, of course, be the first part of many episodes we do on economic things. But Chris thought that the best place to start would just be a discussion on what central banking is, and then we will talk about usury some as well. So, Chris, before we get started, is there anything you would like to talk about, share, or preface this stream with?
I would just like to say that a lot of research and writing has gone into this episode. Economics is a very disputed science, and no matter what position someone takes on it, you'll always find someone who comes out and says, but I went to university and, no, you don't know what you're talking about. I wanted to make clear I have not got an economics degree, and I am sensitive to accusations that only people who have gone to university understand economics. But there is a flaw in this assumption, which is that the current economic system greatly rewards certain people and diminishes others. And it is a feature of economics that whoever it is that is rewarded by the current system always comes out and says, oh, yes, this system is absolutely correct. This is the best system. Well, of course, you would say that. It is making you and your friends incredibly obscenely rich at the expense of everyone else. So tonight, I just wanted to take a sort of 6,000-foot view of some of the mechanisms upon which modern society runs, mainly the assumption that everything must work on usury, the idea of fractional reserve banking, and the constantly inflating money supply, which is the curse, effectively, that we are told that we must bear in order to have a society, and also coincidentally allows the government to not only tax but to undergo large socially transformative projects, which the government would not be able to do if they could not print money out of thin air. If they had to actually go to people's houses, farms, and tax them, then unpopular policies would not get funding. This is, of course,
Right.
the genius of a government being able to print money out of thin air. They can privilege behaviors that they want, and discourage behaviors that they do not want. And this is a feature in modern societies. Governments tax things that they don't want you to do,
Yeah.
and they don't tax things that they do want you to do. And based upon that rubric, what the government wants you to do is borrow money firstly, and give all of the money that you are saving to a bank or to a corporation to do what they will with it and put it into the productive economy. Some people think this is a great idea, others not so much, and we will be getting into that. And of course, there is the issue of the Fed. I'm just trying to collect my thoughts on this. I hope you will enjoy this stream.
Well, that's great. I have a lot to say about taxes and that kind of thing too, but I'll save that for a different stream if we do one specifically about taxes, or else I would talk for 20 minutes. So I'll save that. Chris, would you like me to start us off with that video we have prepared?
Yes, if you would. I've got a video prepared. This is President Bukele from El Salvador, talking about central banking, and I thought this was a really, really good video. We don't usually do them, but this was too good to pass up.
Yeah, this is a short video clip, only about 3 minutes, but this is an important preface to what we're going to be talking about tonight, and it really sets the tone. So,
financial situation of the United States. When I talk to my conservative friends right here, they always tell me that the problem is high taxes, but they're wrong. Of course, high taxes are extremely high here in the United States. I give you that. You're right in that. But that's not the real problem. The real problem is not the high taxes themselves, but the fact that they are not even really funding the government. But even those high taxes, higher than a lot of places in the world, but even those taxes are really funding the government. So who's financing the government? Government is financed by treasury bonds, paper. And who buys the treasury bonds? Mostly the Fed. And how does the Fed buy them? By printing money. But what backing does the Fed have for that money being printed? The treasury bonds themselves. So basically, you finance the government by printing money out of thin air. Someone could ask, well, so if the government can print unlimited amounts of money out of thin air, why did they collect taxes? I mean, in theory, it would make sense, right? If they can print unlimited amounts of money, why would they need taxes for? The answer is simple, but it's very shocking. The real problem is that you pay high taxes only to uphold the illusion that you are funding the government, which you are not. It's shocking, but it's true. The government is funded by money printing, paper backed with paper, a bubble that will inevitably burst. The situation is even worse than it seems, because if most Americans and the rest of the world were to become aware of this farce, confidence in your currency would be lost, the dollar will fall, and the Western civilization with it. If the next president of the United States doesn't make the necessary policies and structural changes, sooner or later that bubble will burst. There's still time. You don't have to make the same mistakes we did in the 60s and the 70s. You can still jump before the water boils.
All right.
So Bukele is half right there. There are other reasons why the government taxes. The first being to lower inflation. They take money off you so that you cannot spend it into the productive economy and raise prices through inflation. And as I was saying before, the second reason is social engineering to privilege behaviors that they wish to privilege, people that they wish to privilege, and to stop you from doing stuff that they don't like. Now, I've got a couple of quotes here. There are many great quotes on Usury, and I just want to like read a few of them. Let's see, where have we got here? Let's go to in small and view, please. Yes.
Sure.
Oh, I'm losing my windows here. Right. Okay. Yes. There we go. Okay. So this is one of my favorite from Abraham Lincoln. The money power preys upon the nation in times of peace and conspires against it in times of adversity. It is more despotic than monarchy, more insolent than autocracy, more selfish than bureaucracy. It denounces as public enemies all who question its methods or throw light upon its crimes. Very, very based there.
A based statement from a man I do not like.
Yes. Well, even a stopped president is right twice a day or something like that.
That's right. Something like that.
The synonym of usury is ruin, from Samuel Johnson. And of course, this extremely famous quote from Nathan Rothschild: I care not what puppet is placed upon the throne of England to rule the empire. The man who controls Britain's money supply controls the British Empire, and I control the British money supply. And to give you an idea of how bad things are currently in the US, which is honestly approaching a hyperinflationary spiral, the US national debt is now rising by $1 trillion about every 100 days. So that's sort of $3.5 trillion a year. And the interest on paying that debt, the interest rate, of course, which is set by the Fed, will probably soon become the greatest expense that the US government has. This is all of the money that has been printed since they started counting it in 1959. I'm sure they were counting it before then, but the Fed's figures only go back to 1959.
Wouldn't want us to know what happened before then, would they?
Yes, yes. And of course, crucially, when Nixon decoupled from the gold standard, thus ending even the semblance of any kind of backing to the US dollar, productivity through technology continued to rise, but compensation has become basically flat. And this is essentially what we are all going through at the moment. Right, so let me just... What would you do, dear viewer, if you had infinite money? Would you perhaps take the small view, buy a large house, hookers and cocaine, give yourself over to a life of debauchery and laziness? Or would you seek to change the world around you? You could buy up people, buy up political parties, buy up information, hire investigators, start pressure groups, influence entire governments. If you and your friends were the only group with such an ability to make infinite money, your power would be irresistible and unquestionable. People could try and fight back, but sooner or later, you would own them all. Sooner or later, you could make their loans come due, buy their assets, influence with favors and threats everyone who would stand in the way of your vision for society. In my opinion, this is the most accurate description of the society that we now live in. It has sort of been this way for a while, but the cracks are now very much beginning to show. Once a government starts printing money out of thin air, it is only a matter of when, not a matter of if. And although the very, very smart people at the banks have come up with a number of mechanisms to delay the inevitable is inevitable because it is inevitable. Whether it takes 50 years or 100 years, hyperinflation and collapse is the inevitable result.
And like we've mentioned before, if not on this stream series, definitely on Discordant Dragons when this type of topic comes up, it's important to remember that over 90% of all U.S. currency ever to exist has been printed in the last 3 years. That's
Yes.
how fast they are making this money. And it really is the meme money printer go burr. That's
yes.
what's been happening at a federal level. It's just like he showed you the graphic earlier. Every 100 days or so, the U.S. Debt goes up $1 trillion. That is suicidal. So when I use the phrase often on stream, we are on a Keynesian hell train that is going straight off a cliff to hell. This is what I'm talking about. It's this right here. The people that are doing this know exactly what they're doing.
And this
And
is also
they don't care.
This is also why the study of accurate history is highly discouraged. This is not a new thing in history. Every single time this trick is tried, the people who are in charge, who get the infinite money, are like, oh no, this time it's different, bros. It's basically the mirror image of communism, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Some kind of crisis comes up, and the government is like, oh look, hey, how about we print some money to cover the fact that people don't want to pay us taxes, either because they hate us or because there's a crop failure or there's a imminent war. And they're like, oh, we'll just print a little bit, bros, like just for this crisis. And it always goes wrong. But at least in history, when a government just prints its own money, it is one thing. The current obscene system that takes place in the Western world, where you have a private central bank that prints the money and then loans that money to the government, that the government must pay interest upon, is truly diabolical.
Yeah.
Right. All of us have spent so much time wondering how to make a better society. I would like to say up front that I am not a utopian, and I do not believe that there is such a thing as a perfect society in the way that most utopians imagine. Indeed, for me, the perfect society would simply be one that functions well and is in tune with the ethnos of its citizens. To quote Deng Xiaoping, I do not care whether the cat is black or white, as long as it catches mice. Whether this is a democracy, aristocracy, monarchy, or republic matters less than whether it produces a good outcome for the vast majority of its citizens.
Mm-hmm.
In the West, we are so used to society being totally dysfunctional that we argue over systems of government while missing the point that it is government if the government was working effectively, we would barely think about it. Consider the following. Most people are not electricians. They do not know how the wiring in their house works. They flick a switch, the lights come on, they pay the electric bill every month, and as long as this system is functional, they do not need to know any more. Only when it breaks are people forced to learn how the wiring in their house works so they can fix it. Politics is the same. If our societies were running well, politics would be a niche profession reserved for nerds and toffs. But because it is running so badly, everyone now must take an interest. Although I do not believe in a perfect society, there is one part that, in my opinion, is so crucial to it that solving it would lead to knock-on effects that would touch and make better nearly all other aspects of society. Of course, I am talking about usury and central banking. We are told that the greatest evil for a society is deflation. Therefore, constant inflation is the price we have to pay for a modern society. But why is this? If inflation is constantly eating away at the value of money, then the only way to make sure your money does not devalue is to invest it and get a return on it. This is sold as a good thing for society, that it makes everything more productive. But by investing your money, you are also giving up control of it. This is an absolute necessity. If you retain control over your own money, it gradually loses value. The upshot of this system is that banks and companies wind up with everyone's savings, eventually resulting in money trust organizations like BlackRock that wield incredible financial power. Because everyone must invest their money in order to receive a return, the ultimate power comes from setting the interest rates, which is returned on that money. Adjust the interest rate and everything changes. Low interest rates cause a gush of money into the economy, triggering a boom. High interest rates cause a bust, triggering a depression. Of course, the central bank acts as though it is unaware of this mechanic, acting as though the economy is some kind of god, too complex to be understood. Thus, mistakes cannot be blamed upon it, yet the economy is simple enough, supposedly, that they take for themselves the power of stewardship over it. This is a scheme so devious that not one man in 1,000 understands it. Those who do are regaled as crackpots, and despite working in finance myself, it took me many years to understand how this scam works. Usury serves as both a way to impoverish and to control society. It is not enough that the money power is rich, you must be poor, so that the coercive effect of money is maximized. Someone who is comfortable in their affairs cannot be bribed by offers of money, since he already has enough. Similarly, they cannot be coerced by calling in their credit, which, if they refuse the request, will result in their home being sold out from under them. In the face of such pressures, is it any wonder that greed proliferates through a society, as less and less people are truly comfortable in money, not having so much that they devote their lives to making more, but not having so little that money is constantly on their mind, their lives precarious, only one illness away from total penury. Always the problem with usury is, where will people get the money to repay the loans? The consensus opinion is that business activity creates wealth, and that as long as a business is creating a higher return than the interest due on the loans used to set up that business, all is well. However, this puts a flaw on the kinds of businesses that are viable. Someone who wishes to run a business at a loss for a social good is unable to do so. This is why charities exist, as the government compensates this tendency by giving certain organizations a pass on paying taxes in order to make this possible. Now, this, for example, is one of the reasons why the government highly dislikes the crypto bros, because the crypto bros essentially made money out of nothing. They did not borrow this money from a bank. There is no loan to call in. The crypto bros are asset rich, and unless they were silly enough to loan out their crypto and get cash in return, there is very little leverage. Look at all of the cool businesses that the crypto bros have started. They don't have to run these ideas past a bank first. It is this control mechanism of having to get a loan to set up a business or a venture that is a very, very powerful force in shaping society. People are forced into a situation where they have no other place to go for investment money other than the banks, which impose conditions and frequently make more on the loan than the principal itself. In the modern world, each loan issued creates new money out of thin air. Each loan repaid destroys that money. This leads inexorably to inflation through money creation during a boom, and mass defaults as money is destroyed during a bust. Due to the process of fractional reserve banking, the only limit to how much money a bank can lend out is set by its reserve limit. If the limit is 10%, then for every $100 a bank gets in deposit, they can loan out $90. Pardon me. However, since the loans are given out and immediately deposited at another bank, which then become reserves of that bank, this becomes a huge feedback loop, a self-licking ice cream cone that produces more loans, making more deposits, making more loans, massively increasing the money supply. Of course, the banks are not really free to set their own interest rates. These are set by the privately owned central banks, which give them incredible power to control the economy. Now, the way this works in the Fed is, as Bukele was saying, if the government wants money, they basically buy bonds. The Fed loans them money. Wait, I've actually got the whole process here. Wait, where is it? The US government needs currency. The US Treasury prints up some bonds. The Federal Reserve creates Federal Reserve notes out of thin air, and its primary dealers then buy said bonds from the US government. The US government now has new currency created out of thin air by the Fed banks. Now, the US taxpayers owe interest and principal on said US bonds, as well as paying a fee to the New York Fed shareholders, the primary dealers, the big banks. This is the public issues portion of the US public debt. How it should be. Congress makes an annual budget, tax revenues are collected, and any budget shortfall is then new debt-free US notes issued by the US Treasury itself. No bonds needed, no US public debt to issue our own currency. Now, excuse me, hang on. When the government prints money, this is known as the Cantillon effect, they get the first use of it. They get to buy things at the current price. The people who are given that money in exchange for goods get a discount. For the government, they get the greatest discount, of course, because the money was free. The second person who gets this money, they also get a discount. The third person this money passes on to, the price remains about the same. The positive and the negative cancel each other out. However, everyone else further down the chain loses the value of money as prices rise. This is known as the Cantillon effect. There, I had a very, very good diagram illustrating this, but just think of sort of the Fed as like the center of a circle and concentric rings spreading out through the economy as the money changes hands and as things are brought up, affecting the price via supply and demand.
And let's pause here for a moment to explain to people why that new money buys more early on. Explain that as a matter of flooding the market with more dollars. Explain the why they have more value since they are at the head of the inflation train.
Well, let's put it this way. Say you are running a shop, and you have 1,000 oranges. And I print up a bunch of free money and I come to you and I'm like, I want 500 of those oranges. And I buy them all off you, right?
At the price I usually sell them
for. At the price you usually sell them for.
We'll keep it simple and say it's $1 a piece. So how many was it that you wanted? Like 1,000? Yeah.
So I buy 500 of your oranges, right? And the supply is then decreased. There are now less oranges in the market. So you raise your prices. Now, I don't care because the money for me was free. I don't really care what price I paid for it. But the other people who come to your shop, they pay more for the oranges. And as you spend that money, right, the money that I have given to you to buy the oranges, say you go out and you buy, 100 apples. As you take those apples out of circulation, as you buy them, the cost of apple rises through supply and demand. So this printing of free money causes the first few people who get hold of this money to get a massive discount. This is a big reason why anyone who has access to the money river effectively is sort of insulated from the effects of central bank printing.
And the reason I brought this up is I wanted our listeners to understand why the people at the front of the line are actually getting free money and buying things at a good value, because think about it. All of these new dollars, when they go into circulation, at the time that they have all of these new dollars, prices have not been yet affected by the encroaching inflation by injecting all of these new dollars into the economy. But very, very soon afterwards, within weeks or months, prices all begin to go up. But the people that got the money at the first of the Keynesian hell train, they've already bought all the goods and services that enriched them. They've already spent this new money, they've invested it, and they've bought hard, valuable resources.
Yes, exactly.
So that is how your money is devalued, and the rich keep getting richer, while your money, even if you have more dollars than you had previously, you have less spending power and less, let's say, influence financially, because you are at the back of the bus.
Yes, and it is a common thing that people tend to look at the numbers. I have more dollary dues, therefore I have more money. But money is more than just about the number of dollary dues. It's about what each dollary due will buy you. So, there's you may have more dollars, but if the value of each dollar is declining, you will wind up with less. It should be noted, by the way, that much of what lefties talk about when they decry capitalism is really money printing and usury.
Mhm.
There is a concrete reason why any person running a business is compelled to make a profit at all costs. If they cannot pay the loans back that back the business, they will lose everything.
Yeah.
This also applies to housing, of course. The vast majority of people really do own nothing. What they have is owned by the bank, and they pay rent to the bank in the form of interest, without which they will be depossessed. The
Yeah.
communists love to rave on about capitalism without realizing, by the way, that the Soviet Union also had a central bank and engaged in usury and money printing. You are merely trading one form of society backed by usury for another.
That's why I've said for many, many years now that communism and capitalism, I don't like either term, and I don't claim to be either one, because I see them both as just a different side of the same hollow materialist shekel. That's all they are. Like they go about it in, if you want to use the terminology, a more left wing and a more right wing approach. But at the end of the day, it's still the same thing: central banking, usury, destroying everyone's possibilities and robbing everyone of wealth. That's what both systems do, because of
Yes,
central banking and usury being the core fundament of each system that we know, that we've had for the last 100 years.
exactly. And the end point of central banking and usury is the hollowing out of all forms of industry and morality within a country. Once it is more effective to engage in financialization, more and more people who would be designing bridges or building things or improving the lot of the citizenry around them go into finance, where they use their great intelligence to dream up ever more complex ways of making money out of money rather than making actual things. Countries such as the US and the UK have reached the terminal endpoint of this process. As I believe I was mentioning on another stream, you can now, if you go to Deliveroo and you buy a pizza, you can get a loan to buy a pizza. This is the final endpoint where you know need like loans even to
Mhm.
just sustain your very, very basic needs. Now, countries and debt. Once the debt becomes unsustainable for a country, if they are not printing and they are dependent on loans, more financing will be arranged. But in return for that financing, the country involved must do something for the global elite, whether that is restructuring their economy, selling off critical industry to the elite, or the newest thing, debt for nature swaps, which is giving up large control of large tracts of priceless land in turn for debt relief. And just a little aside, when inflation reaches a terminal point, there are only a couple of ways out. One is to revalue the currency, but another more common move is for the government to seize a large amount of assets and then use that to back the currency. So, Ancien regime France, for example, I think just after the French Revolution, they stole a whole bunch of land from the church and used that to back the rapidly inflating paper assignat. assignat.
And let
And
us
this
not forget the mandatory gold confiscation that
correct.
happened in America 100 years ago.
Exactly the same principle. Exactly the
Mhm.
same principle. And it looks like there is going to be a move to do this, to just essentially swallow up forests and seas and everything and use it to back a new currency. This is always really the play. Heads they win, tails you lose. They either get an insane amount of money from a loan being paid off, all the while crimping your ability to make income on money created out of thin air, or you default and they get the underlying asset. In the case of organizations like the IMF, when dealing with entire countries, default is the goal. This is why this system goes so perfectly with democratic governments. Whoever is in power now will be out in 10 years, by the time the effects of their policies become apparent. Those who wish to be voted in will always be able to use the economy as an excuse or wish to expand government programs, and the easiest way to do this is through international loans or bond issues. If the debt burden has become so great that interest payments now comprise the most significant part of the government budget, then refinancing is the goal. And in order to do this, you must be a regime that is favorable to the bankers. In case of default, or in case of an unwillingness to pay, in case you decide to tell the bankers to shove off, you repay your loans to the IMF and say, we will not be doing it anymore, a country will be attacked by every country that the bankers own, which is all of them, by the way, except for Russia, Iran, and North Korea. The full military might of NATO will be deployed against you. Once your country is destroyed, large reconstruction loans will be made and the cycle begins anew. In such a circumstance, everyone can be paid off, and those who refuse to take a bribe will be either killed or smeared as war criminals. Gaddafi is a good example of this.
Yeah, I was going to bring up Gaddafi if you didn't. Yeah.
Although hardly a saint, he did make Libya prosper and demonstrated to Africa that a system without central banking was possible. Well, without fractional reserve banking, he wanted to base the country's economy on gold. This, of course, could not be allowed.
I wonder when the usury jackals are going to come for our El Salvador bro. I wonder when they're going to come for him.
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm sure they are looking at El Salvador with extreme concern. You know, they cannot have a country demonstrating that it can be run successfully in this way. People might start getting ideas. Now, going back to inflation. Sorry, this script is a bit jumpy.
It's okay. It's a complex topic. That's why we're going to have to cover this in multiple episodes. But this is a good starting presentation. This is good.
So, as I was saying, once a government starts printing money out of nothing, hyperinflation is the inevitable result. It may take many years, but the result inexorably is the same. This has been known for centuries. But since 1913, when the Federal Reserve was founded through trickery and deceit, a number of methods have been used to delay the inevitable, the most important being the central control of interest rates. This allows the economy to be expanded and contracted at will. By lowering the interest rate and encouraging lending, the economy goes through a boom. When rates are raised, it goes into bust as everyone struggles and loans are called in. The more a society lives off debt and financialization, the more acute this effect is. When everyone has a mortgage, the control this gives the central bank over the economy cannot be overstated. Thus, when playing the market or looking for value inflation in any asset, the first question you should be asking is the banking system adding money to the system or taking it away? If money is being added, then the numerical value of all assets will go up. If money is being created out of thin air and then lent at interest, where is the money for that interest supposed to come from? It also has to be created, of course. This leads to an orgy of currency debasement, which eventually destroys all of society.
Yeah.
It ruins savers through price inflation. It encourages offshoring as inflation eats away at value, and encourages immigration as markets seek foreign workers at cheaper wages, because wages in the host country cannot keep up with inflation. It discourages childbirth because it becomes impossible to save for a child. It encourages immorality as those with infinite money use it in degraded and degenerate ways. Usury and inflation are the root cause of much of the world's problems. Look at what has happened to the world since the founding of the Fed. Income tax, World War I, World War II, the War on Terror, innumerable financial crashes. Believe it or not, the original argument for the Federal Reserve was that it would produce financial stability. It has done the exact opposite.
Again, another thing it has in a direct parallel with communism.
The ability to print money out of thin air and tax the population at source also enables government malfeasance and crazy schemes such as wars, social engineering, and other policies the public hates, since if the government had to collect the taxes, people would not pay. By printing, they can bypass the populace and simply tax the money at source. In reality, of course, all currency is actually backed by labor, the doing of things. Labor and assets produced by labor is all there really is to measure in currency. Taxation and money printing is the theft of labor by the parasite class. I'm pretty sure a communist must have said this at some point, but you know,
But
if
it's true.
if it's true,
Yeah.
right?
And this is why I don't like calling the evil oligarchs. I don't like calling them capitalists or communists or whatever, because I think that despite how easy it is to say, oh, look, they're doing a global communism, I think that this evil regime we have now is kind of a hybrid of different isms and systems to culminate into just this bureaucratic usury machine. And doesn't really matter left or right or communist or nationalist or whatever. This core pillar, usury and infinity money, no system, no morality can last with this in place. This is guaranteed destruction, just like communism. It's the same thing. And I think that this is why I think this is the first important thing to cover with economics when it comes to the empire of lies, is because any system that we study, whether it be the Third Reich Germany, whether it be Stalinist Russia, Maoist China, or the United States today, this is a core problem. Money printer go burr, everything falls apart.
And not only that, of course, neoliberalism. I mean, I kind of think that neoliberalism, as currently defined, is really just freedom for usury and currency debasement.
Mm-hmm.
Every other freedom may be impinged, except the freedom to loan and borrow money, and the freedom of the government to print money. This is really the fundamental freedom of neoliberalism.
Yep.
This is why, for example, there are no taxes on loans. There's no taxes on paying interest, but there are taxes on saving, spending, inheritance, etc.
Mm-hmm.
The government wants you to loan and borrow money, not save it. By definition, the government taxes any activity it wishes to discourage. The purpose of a system is what it does. Taxes on savings discourage saving. The government admits this quite openly. They want you to invest the money instead of saving it. They want a great chain where no one, except the banks, really own anything. Everything you own has money owed on it. Anything you have saved, you have loaned to someone else. The lie, of course, is that such a system can be sustained indefinitely. Its life is extended through a regular boom and bust cycle, during which the money and credit supply is first expanded and contracted. We are told inflation is a necessary evil, because without it, we would have the dreaded evil of deflation, the worst thing ever, where prices go down. But the only reason this is so terrible is because everybody owes money. Every dollar is a debt instrument. Consider, as inflation marches onward, the real value of the money you owe decreases. If you borrow 100,000, in 10 years, the real value of the amount you owe is only 80,000. If deflation happens, the opposite occurs. The amount that you owe in real terms rises. This is the great evil that inflation is supposed to prevent. However, if the entire economy was not based upon usury, this would not be a problem. If saving were encouraged, then deflation would actually increase the amount of savings. Oh horror, the financial engineers cry. That money is locked up in savings. What is put beneath the mattress should be loaned out into the wider economy to drive industry. Well, if some wish to gamble their money, they have the choice to do so. But to mandate that everyone must give up what little they save to the banks, to have it lent out just so they can keep ahead of inflation, is a horror. At every turn, the government disincentivizes actual saving. Putting your money in the bank is not saving. The bank lends it out again and more immediately. If the bank goes under, you are out of luck, unless the government prints more money to bail out the bank, in which case you still lose money through the inflation caused by the bailout. The only actual thing you can save in nowadays really is real estate, and that is taxed very heavily, or Bitcoin, which they are trying to tax. They get you at the point that you convert it into goods or cash, obviously. Indeed, the only thing that is not taxed is loans and the paying of interest on loans. There is no doubt that this is how the government wishes the economy to run. So, in conclusion, I don't have many white pills on this, I'm afraid. This is sort of the final boss of the current system. It is such a massive assumption that many people they cannot envision a society without usury. And there are economists I respect, by the way, who have said that it is not the loaning of money that is the problem. It is fractional reserve banking and printing money out of nothing that is the problem, which is basically what I was saying. It is not that you should forbid all people to loan money. You just need to forbid them from loaning money that is not backed by an actual tangible asset, because creating money out of nothing is essentially forgery. That's really what it is. If you had 5 ounces of gold and you created, 2 more ounces that weren't really gold, just out of thin air, that is counterfeiting. That is forgery. That is a crime and also a sin. But of course, for those with the right connections, that which is criminal is no longer criminal. So I have a few.
It's a good thing that you brought that up, because that was one of the references I was going to make in my notes, is the concept of fool's gold, or the stories of fairies and pixies and tricksy little sprites being able to make fake gold coins and fake things to trick passersby. That is what all of our governments do. They are creating fool's gold. That's what fiat currency is. They create this gold and they hand it to you and say, "Oh, you did such a good job today at the factory," and they pat you on the head and they give you gold, and then a couple of years it turns into a rock and it's worthless. That is what our currency is now. And it doesn't matter if you save it, it's still a useless rock in a few years. So that was one of the analogies I was going to make. So.
Well, you have to give it to a bank or give it to a corporation, or
so they can cast their magic spell on it and make it into gold again.
Yes, so that hopefully the return that you get on it will outpace inflation if you are lucky. I mean, if inflation is running at 6% and your return is 3%, you're losing 3% in real terms per year, and this adds up because prices never go down. Inflation is never reversed. When the government comes out and says, "Oh, inflation is going down," all they mean is that the price of everything is rising more slowly than it was before.
They don't mean we're not driving off the cliff. They just mean we're going slower towards the cliff when they say it.
Only in exceptional circumstances does the proliferation of a certain thing cause its prices to go down even with inflation. So technology is like this, for example. If you look at the price of of personal computers, when they first came out, they were incredibly expensive. Yeah. And this sort of mass production of things does actually cause the price of something to drop. But this is in spite of inflation, not because of it. So I have a few suggestions. I have read so much on economics. It's such a disputed field. Yeah. There's always somebody out there who says, "Oh, this is a new economic system that we could try." About the only sort of there's nothing new really under the sun, though. It's just that inevitably these systems tend to benefit certain people while discriminating against others. So there's a clear, reason why a lot of people back certain systems. Yeah. So how could we disengage from such a system? At the moment, the financialization is so acute that if usury were banned tomorrow, the entire economy would collapse, plunging millions into poverty. And we don't want that. We could relax legal tender laws, allow the payment of taxes and other payments in Bitcoin or other assets such as gold and silver. This would create more flow into crypto, would normalize crypto, allow people to invest and hold crypto, which cannot for the moment be inflated. Whether this will stay the case with Bitcoin's ETFs is another question. Now, just a little bit of clarification here. When people say crypto, they mean a lot of things. I'm talking specifically about Bitcoin. And I fear that what is about to happen with the Bitcoin market is the fact that all of these ETFs and future markets are now proliferating, that it will wind up like gold and silver, where the price is controlled by these secondary markets that buy and sell it and keep it stable. On the other hand, this could be a good thing by encouraging widespread adoption, because large, businesses and corporations are not going to try and invest or use as a currency anything whose value wildly fluctuates, because it's a bad bet. You might buy it today and then tomorrow it's shed 10%, and that's so, debt jubilees. In both Islam and in Judaism, there is a debt jubilee every 10 years, I believe, where all debts are forgiven. This is to stop people being enslaved by debt for life and give them a chance to start over. Now, obviously, this would change the pricing structure when people were lent money. As the debt jubilee approached, it would become harder and harder to become a loan because to get a loan, because all of those loans would be cancelled. I'm just saying it could be done. And 3, massively restrict government printing of money until it is gradually phased out. and 4, end fractional reserve banking.
Yeah.
Both of these two would probably collapse the economy at this point. And in practice, this is really what happens. So these systems only change when they collapse. While everything's sort of going mostly well, everyone's like, oh, these are very, very critical parts of the operating structure, operating system of a society. And people meddle with them at their peril.
No, they meddle with them at our peril, not their peril.
Yes, that's right. Exactly. Now, none of these will happen.
Because these rich jerks, it's not like when they collapse the economy that they're going to be held accountable. No, they're going to get in their private jets and fly halfway around the world and not care.
Yes, indeed. Well, they'll have bought assets. They'll
exactly.
be all in on, gold. Or,
well, why do you think Bill
real
Gates likes to
estate
buy up farmland? That kind of thing.
Exactly. Now, none of these things will happen voluntarily, of course. I would go so far as to state that the banks would rather 100 million people die than to be forced to submit to such demands, particularly organizations like the Fed that are backed by very, very heavy, deep criminal state kind of people.
Mm-hmm.
The only way this will happen is once hyperinflation finally causes a collapse and people transition to a new system. The current plan clearly is to transition to a central bank digital currency once hyperinflation hits and force people to use it by making it the only way you can pay taxes. This is what legal tender means, by the way, right?
Yeah.
This is how the government forces you to use the currency they want. They say, well, you owe taxes. If you don't pay the taxes, we're going to put you in jail. And the only way you can pay those taxes is in this currency that we control. So you can't rock up to the government and say, here's a bunch of gold. I've now paid off my taxes. They're like, no. You've got to use that gold to buy Federal Reserve notes and then give the Federal Reserve notes to us. And this, of course, is how users force you to use degraded money. This is why people can't just drop using currencies that are rapidly devaluing. Anyway, that's the end of my bit. I hope you all enjoyed that.
I did, Chris. It was very good. Thank you. I've been looking forward to getting to economic topics. I know that it's boring to most people, but I like this kind of topic, maybe because I've got, society, logical, big brain, and I like to chew on this because it's one of the most complex things in our entire world. But it's important for you guys to understand a core fundament of how the anti-white narrative, the anti-white regime hurts us Westerners. And this is one of the primary ways that these evil people who are just picking the bones of our culture and punishing us while they do it, this is the primary vector through which they harm us and keep us paralyzed and weak and subservient to this evil regime, is this. So let's go to Embiggen view, Chris. And then
sure, can I just finish with one more thing? There's a quote,
go ahead.
I couldn't find it, that someone quite smart says that the virtue of a nation's currency is also the virtue of its people. So the less virtuous the currency, the less virtuous the people, because, the more people who are given access to, unjust money or the magical money tree, the more their behavior degrades. And I really do think that a very, very persuasive argument can be made that many of the ills that we are suffering at the moment, immigration, for example, we've got to keep wages low. Why do you have to keep wages low? Well, we don't know, right? It's just, it's just the way things are. Things are always just the way things are until they aren't.
A man can either serve God or money, but not both.
Yep. Right. So in Embiggen, is that correct? Yes.
Let's Embiggen. I have a few things prepared to say. Not a lot. I won't keep you guys too long, but I do have a few things to say. And before I get to what I have to say, we're going to put up the reminder banner. Like I said early at the beginning of the stream, we will be getting to all of your paid chats at the end, which will be very soon here. And you still have 5 or 10 minutes to get in your paid chats. You can do so with rants on Rumble, hyper chats on Odyssey. And of course, I would appreciate messages on Entropy. Entropy are ideologically aligned with those of us who love the West, its people, and free speech. So you can support some people who agree with us by using their service over on Entropy. I greatly prefer that to other forms of paid chats. And I just realized that it signed me out of Entropy when I went over there to check, like it did to you earlier, Chris. I hate
it when it does that.
I don't know why that happens.
I check it before the stream. I go to check and be like, and yes. So don't worry. I can.
Give me just a second here.
Yes, we don't want any dead air. after
Yeah,
all.
I don't know why it does this sometimes. It's frustrating. It's not so bad on Discordant Dragons because I'm not the one talking all the time. And if I would have noticed it earlier, it wouldn't have been a problem because you were speaking, but I didn't notice it till right now, right when I was about to speak. All right. But anyway, let me take this back down and remind you guys you can also send in short messages over on PayPal, Cash App, and tips on Subscribestar as well. And if you like the work that Chris and I do, please consider supporting us monthly. You can support me monthly on my Subscribestar. And what's your monthly support service, Chris? I've forgotten.
I don't have a monthly support.
Oh, you don't have one yet.
service.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I
Forgive me.
really should set up a Subscribestar. Actually,
You
I
should.
haven't,
You
I
should.
haven't got
It's
around to
good.
it.
And you can
Yeah.
support me for just $1 a month. And yes, it really does matter. Having multiple people that just spend $1, $2, $5 a month, all of it adds up. And it really helps me make a living doing this to bring you guys quality content. So speaking of quality content, maybe I shouldn't have said that before I say what I have to say, but we'll find out. I have a few short things prepared to share today. Primarily, why is usury wrong? Why is it wrong? I would like to start with 2 Bible verses, both from the New Testament. The first, Matthew 6:24. No man can serve 2 masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. Ye cannot serve both God and mammon. Also, 1 Timothy 6:9 and 10. But they that will be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolish and hurtful lusts, which is what Chris mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
which drown men in destruction and perdition. For the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some coveted after, they have erred from the faith and pierced themselves through with many sorrows.
Yeah. I mean, it's true now as it was then, man, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
some things are so true that even 2000 years later, they are still as true as when they're written. No, it's the love of money, not money in itself, like not the medium of exchange, not buying and selling. It is the love or the lust.
Yeah.
I think lust might probably be about it. The lust
Yeah.
for money. You know, oh, got to have that money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me continue on with what little I've got here, and I kept it short this week because I knew Chris's presentation was going to be dense. I was raised as a Christian. I was taught old-timey Southern Baptist Christianity about how Jews and Muslims and Hindus were very different from us. How they had foreign belief structures, which included, included using us to their benefit and to our detriment. I was taught about why being honest about money was so important, because money was a representation of the fruit of our labor that we share with others. And to lie or cheat about money was to steal the livelihood, the fruits of others' labors. And that was a very evil thing. So, right out of the way, I knew growing up that cheating people on financial stuff was inherently wrong and an ugly thing to do. Like most Appalachians, I grew up on the poor side of things, as most of us here are what city folk would call have-nots. We share clothes. We wear mostly hand-me-downs. We shop at Goodwill or consignment stores. We get stuff from free from church at food drives and clothing drives. Local markets are where we get our food. We don't get to eat out at restaurants much, if there even is fast food or restaurants around where we live. Usually not. We oftentimes have to build and repair our own things. So lawnmowers and refrigerators and tractors and bicycles will sometimes be a generation or 2 old by the time you get them. And you have to learn how to make them still work because you just don't have money or assets to buy new ones. Where was I? So when I became an adult and learned how everything ran on debt, fees, interest, mortgages, etc., I became angry at how wrong everything felt about adult life, how everything in my culture felt evil, like it was based on some sin that I couldn't avoid. And I could feel the evil of central banking and usury in everything. That's why many years ago, my dissident journey started with Mises and Hoppian libertarian economics. It was Austrian economics that led me to where I am today, not anything else. Sure, other stuff about racial consciousness and learning about why and how we're lied to about wars and the bad behavior of governments, sure, that helped. But really, it was this, what we're talking about today, central banking and organized, inescapable usury. That is what made me a dissident before anything else. Now, as an older adult, I started pondering the why behind usury being so wrong. through the studies I did of economics, through talking to people older and more experienced than me, I learned a simple way to express that why. And it's that no one has a right to get paid. No one. You don't have a right to get paid. There is no right for you to get money for nothing. And that's what the evil tyrants that rule us do. They do not deserve and they have no right to do what they're doing to us because they get quote unquote paid for nothing. In fact, they get paid for the opposite of something. They get paid to destroy, to unmake, to banish, to hamper what they are supposed to do, which is secure an existence for our children and our pursuit of happiness. Excuse me. But that wasn't enough. I still feel like there's a deeper reason for why it's wrong. And now in my mid-40s, the best way I can phrase it is this. Like with nearly everything about this cursed society we are born into, usury is an inversion of something natural, something divine. Taxes and tithes were once a part of Western civilization's hierarchical structure because every caste had something to give to others, all the way up to God at the top. God gave of himself to Jesus so that we might have sanctification, a conduit to salvation in the divine realm. Kings and queens gave of themselves to provide for their court, and that court in turn provided order and safety for the plebs, and the plebs in turn gave proceeds of their labor for the betterment of the kingdom. Usury, central banking, fiat currency, this system we suffer in today is a moral inversion, satanic, if you will, where the societal order now focuses outward instead of inward, turning the previous symbiotic relationship of castes into a harmful parasitic web of wealth and labor extraction. And remember what I said earlier. Money and wealth is a representation of our time, our investment, our labor, and our lifeblood. Usury is wrong because it's stealing your life. Now, that's the end of my presentation.
And might I also add, it is also stealing your freedom, right? It is everything that you are taxed upon is an imposition upon your freedom. Government is extremely well aware of this. When government wishes to discourage a behavior, the first thing that goes through its mind is how can we tax it? Governments love this solution because not only do they get to socially engineer the public, like the bunch of sort of nannies that they are, but they also raise more money doing so. Now, the problem with, for example, having a government that doesn't do any of this is that you run the risk of having a very hierarchically stratified society where the rich hold on to all of their stuff and it's never redistributed. And this is like a sort of feudalism. But we have reached exactly that same state now in many ways. So you can have too much of a thing. I realize that taxes have to exist. I'm not one of those people who think that you can live without a government. I'm not an idiot like that, in my opinion. But if the government wants people to willingly pay taxes, they must be low, and they must give something in return, and they must be part of a political formula that people can buy into. No one willingly pays taxes to a government that they feel works against their own interests. Back in the day, for good or ill, or right or wrong, people in the West broadly believed that the government was serving their interests. So it wasn't as much of a sting to pay taxes on for like basic stuff, garbage.
And not to mention
roads.
taxes were nowhere near as high back then as they are now.
Exactly.
Like,
now
good
they are
example. My mother's husband. I don't call him my stepfather because she married when I was already an adult. But my mother's husband is retiring this year. And one of the main reasons he's taking an early retirement is he had to work until almost May each year before he actually started earning anything because of how much money the government takes. It's just, it's insane. Like when you look at health insurance plus taxes, health insurance alone plus taxes for them, they have to work. He had to work until June before they started making any money at all. Half of the year just to pay Uncle Sam and health insurance. It's
and I'd
ridiculous.
like to point out,
like this system can't last. It's unfair. It's evil. It's wrong.
And it's a massive drag on the productive economy because the government does not know how to spend your money better than you do. This is why, you know, we have in many places,
Even
like,
if they had good intentions, which they don't.
yes, but they're the government. You know, they're so huge, and yeah, and look, you see this as states fail. They
Yeah.
jack taxes up insanely. They try ever greater and more sort of social interventions to try and keep society together because it's inevitably based on a flawed formula. They become afraid of their people because the people, they know the people don't like them. And, you know, usually they will double down and then triple down. And instead of, excuse me, pausing and say, well, why do the people hate us? Perhaps we should stop doing that thing that makes us makes them hate us. They'll be like, oh, no, they only hate us because they're misinformed. They only hate us because they have religion.
And now they just say they just say they hate us because they're evil white people.
Yes.
So,
yes, exactly.
But let me speaking of white, let me end with my little white pill I had prepared. The white pill I have prepared for the end of this dark topic. First of all, I wanted to explain to you why usury is wrong, which I think I did pretty well. My closing white pill is, remember, the technology that exists today is better than it's ever been for the purposes of educating yourself, learning how to be self-sufficient, and how to educate your children without needing other institutions. You can easily network and find others in your country, in your region, that think and want to live like you do. You can network with them, build community with them. We are not isolated like we once were before information technology. But this will too come to an end as everything collapses. We are living on borrowed time with the successes that we have right now as a civilization. They're going to go away. So now is the time to network, to plan, to move, to learn necessary skills of survival, electronics, plumbing, education, how to work on materials, how to work on machines that you have materials for. We need to be building these kind of communities together. We have a lot of this stuff in Appalachia because we've always loved this kind of thing. But a lot of our people out there are not like us. You need to become more like us. You need to use the technologies available while they are available to create, print out dozens or hundreds or thousands of pages of useful educational material, not just for yourself, but for your community, for your children. How to repair things, how to build ham radios, how to repair tractors, how to build things like log cabins, how to create latrines if you need one, that kind of thing. Learn about farming. Learn about how raising a garden or using a hydroponic system works for indoor growing of herbs and vegetables. You can do that. We can all do that. I've done that with my life. I've learned all kinds of stuff. And so our people will create new systems of production and trade as this system collapses and fades. It's not going to be overnight. It might happen fast in some ways, but we have years to prepare, and we all should be. We have weathered evil empires, plagues, and wars before. We have weathered evil kings and queens who hated us, and we can do it again. And thankfully, this time, we have excellent communication technologies and the vast breadth of educational and technological experiences available for us in the palms of our hands. You have to use that power while it's still available for us to secure a future for our children. So that's the closing white pill I have for tonight on the topic.
I don't think all is lost. I think that you will find that Western man is a bit harder to kill off than you know.
Oh yeah, especially mountain folk. You don't want to tangle with us.
especially the hardy mountain folk. This sounds like something out of World of Warcraft, doesn't it? The hardy mountain folk. But yeah.
U.S. FedGov tucked its tail between its legs after fighting retarded caveman in Afghanistan for 20 years. What's it going to be like when they take a swing at Appalachia, I wonder? What's it going to be like?
Do not despair, bros. Just start thinking in a crafty way. You know, many people have just sort of fallen victim to the idea that the world is as it appears, everything is going to work, you know, the way it does, and they just take things at face value. And I think the important thing is to sort of look carefully at the systems around you, figure out how can you take advantage, try and figure out how these systems work. Don't just accept what you are told, well, really by anyone. You know what I mean? Do your own research. I know you're not supposed to do your own research. Read. By the way, speaking of which, if economics interests you, I would like to recommend two very, very good books that are like very good entry levels. One is Basic Economics by Thomas Sowell. Big up to Thomas Sowell. He's one of my favorite based black guys. And Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt. Both of those are excellent places to start if you want a basic grounding in economics. And remember, economics touches everything around you. It is,
Yeah.
Once you realize how it actually works, it becomes much more exciting.
Yeah. It's
Neither
like
of those
seeing the
books,
Matrix in a way. Once
Yeah.
you realize it's there, you see it in everything. Like that's one of the first things that really started me down the red pill path was learning about economics from old Papa Hoppe, the Mises Institute, Thomas Sowell, people like that. This was back in the late aughts when I started learning about this stuff. And then once I learned, I started seeing usury and quantitative easing and all of this stuff. I saw its effects in everything every day. Everything I looked into, I was like, oh, that's because of this. Oh, I can see why this is set up that way. It's because of this. And it's just, it was one of the biggest red pilling things I've ever done was really tearing the mask off of economics and realizing why it all works the way it does. But anyway, that's a story for another time.
Just say, neither of those books have any math in them. And you can find free audiobook versions on YouTube if you just want to listen to them while you're wandering around.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, please go on.
Well, we are at the end of the stream and we need to see what we have. We don't have any hyper chats. We don't have any rants on Rumble. Let me refresh Entropy one last time. Oh, we do have some things over on Entropy. That's wonderful to see. Thank you so much. We have, let me refresh Subscribe Star. We have one thing from Sister E. Essington on Subscribe Star. And I will now check in on Cash App and PayPal and see what we have shaking there as well. Let's see here. Okay. I think we will start with Lady Essington because she got her chat in at the very beginning before the stream started. Now let me pop open PayPal as well. Always slow to load PayPal. Oh, we do have something from Kenneth. Let's see here. I'll do Essington first. Miss Essington, Lady E. Essington on Subscribe Star says, for $10 thank you so much, sister. She says, yes, I'm wishing you, Chris, and all Empire of Lies listeners a joyous Easter. Well, thank you very much, sister. Happy Easter to you and to everyone listening.
Happy Easter, everyone.
All right. Over on PayPal, we have $10. Thank you. Actually, 1034. That's maybe 15 British pounds or 15 Australian dollars. I never remember because PayPal doesn't have an option to let me see the original currency. All it does is just it automatically changes it to USD if you decide to pay me in USD. If you decide to pay me in your original currency, I think it will still show that up, but I have a real problem getting PayPal to show me the actual currency used. I don't know why it's like that. But anyway, for $10.34 translated to USD, Ken says, greetings, Yiz and Newsfist. Have some of these fake and gay marks for... Oh, wait. I always forget who Ken is. Of course. I know who that is. That is Kunst... I can't remember his name because it's German. Let me look. Kunstler Kenneth Krieg. Kunstler Kenneth Krieg. That's who that is. Thank you, Ken. Kunstler Kenneth Krieg.
Thanks,
I'll do my best to remember that going forward, Kunstler. He says... greetings, Yiz and Newsfist. Have some of these fake and gay marks for your fantastic efforts. Thank you so much, friend. Thank you so much. I do appreciate that. Okay. Now let's move to Cash App. We have Jason Kuna, the No White Guilt guy, with us again. Good to hear you here, brother. Or good to see you here, brother, in the chat. Always here. Thank you. He's for $6. Thank you again. He says, folk tithe to fight inflation. Kip. Yes, sir. Well, I don't know if we can fight inflation. That's going to take... only if the white well-being community and those of us who are doing the good work can actually win one day and steer this ship in a better direction. This is all just academic at this point because we lack the power to do anything in this anti-white hell that we live in. But we're making strides towards recapturing our destiny. So hopefully we will. All right, that is all on Cash App tonight, and over on PayPal we just did the only one from Kunstler, so that means we have Entropy now. Over on Entropy, we have $10 from Stumbling. Thank you so much, brother. He says, what can we do to limit our interactions with the parasitic monetary system and insulate ourselves from the coming collapse? Any advice, books, or other sources of information on the topic? Thank you both. Before you speak, Newsfist, my answer is a good one. What I closed with, my closing white pill, that is a way you can start to help. And to just reiterate quickly, become more self-sufficient, become more invested in things that are not money. Like my family and I, we invest in heavy metals, one 500 count box at a time, if you know what I mean. And We also like to grow our own food. Having your own chickens, learning how to keep pigs and goats and stuff is excellent. If you are not into subsistence living by having your own farm and stuff like that, you can do what Newsfist might recommend with crypto and other types of non-fiat currency investments and trade, which at the moment, the options are very few. So let me turn this over to you, Newsfist. You answer this one.
Yeah. So in terms of getting away from the banking system, Bitcoin and Monero, but be wary, of course, with Bitcoin. Learn how to use Bitcoin. It's quite complicated. Of course, if you have crypto on an exchange, effectively it's just in another kind of bank. So you need to learn how to use self-custody wallets and all that kind of like stuff. It's complicated, but it can be done. And then of course there's Monero. But you're not really going to make money on something like Monero. It's just, something you can use as an
alternative source of payment. Like it's not
correct.
Like if you're a crypto bro, remember being a crypto bro and getting crypto wealth doesn't mean it easily can turn into money you need to pay taxes or pay your mortgage. It's not what it's for. It's for trading for goods and services on the internet is primarily what it's great at.
And be extremely wary of, someone saying, "Oh, you can make 100 times on the latest meme coin." Maybe, but you could also lose all of your money. Risk and reward is that kind of thing. There are lots and lots of scams out there. This is why, just straight Bitcoin, it has proven the test of time. It's pretty much the oldest crypto that there is. It's very, very well known. People know how to use it, and there's lots of information out there.
Yeah. Next up on Entropy, we have Jeffrey Mill, a viewer of Newsfist as well. Good to see you here. I see you in the Habiting chat over on Odyssey a lot, friend. Jeffrey Mill for $10 US. Thank you so much, brother. He says, "Thanks, Chris and Yiz heart." He sends a little cute heart. "Have a lovely Easter," and he sends little Christian symbols. Thank you very much. Happy Easter to you too, brother.
Thanks, Jeffrey. I really appreciate it, mate.
Yeah. All right. Let me make sure that I didn't miss anything. I'm going to refresh everything one more time, and I think that's it, and we can say our goodbyes and get out of here. Yep, I'm not seeing anything else. Refresh one last time on that one, and we are good. Okay. Well, I would just like to remind everyone, do intelligent things with your time and your family and your community. When we tell you these dangerous, dark things about our culture, it's not because we want to black pill you. It's because we know we attract motivated, intelligent listeners that care about their people, about their country, and you care about our well-being as a whole. So go and do the things we advise. And remember, we are not saying all of these things on this stream to black pill you. We're telling you so we can have white pills to share with others. We can build and do things, but we have to know the evils first. We got to know what game is being played so we can take the appropriate action. So, Chris, anything you want to say in closing before we get out of here?
Oh, no, just thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you so much for everyone who donated. Remember, Thomas Sowell and Henry Hazlitt, check it out. Everyone should have a basic understanding of economics. It's money makes the world go around. If you don't understand what's making the world go around, you're not going to understand how the world works. And I guess we'll see you next week. I've got no idea what we're doing.
I don't know yet either, but we both have some ideas. We'll work something out. Have a wonderful weekend. Have a blessed, wonderful Easter weekend, everyone. And we will be back Monday. Chris will have the Habiting 2 hours before my stream. And we, of course, will have Discordant Dragons Monday night with some fun guests. So good night, everybody. Make wise decisions. Love yourself, your family, your community, and your people, and put God first. Good night,
everyone. Thank you so much. Bye.